So welcome everyone. It works. Thanks for coming tonight. That works. My role, as you can see, is Watson Partner Innovation. I'm leading this part for Europe for the IBM Watson unit. So Watson, for those who don't know, is the, let's say, artificial intelligence unit, a machine learning unit of IBM. And I'm quite new in this role, I have to say. I joined IBM in January. Before that, I built and ran startup accelerators in San Francisco, in the UK, and in the Netherlands, and built innovation programs in all kinds of aspects and helped to establish, let's say, early stage venture capital programs. Where I also had my first contact three and a half years ago in the Bay Area with machine learning startups. And from that point on, I was quite excited about what's possible and how motivated these teams are in order to make it possible that machines become intelligent. And my goal for tonight is to give you a little bit of an overview about what's the state of the art of AI, where is it coming from, and then spark your interest and spark your mind, better said, about where these technologies can best be applied. Because one of the biggest advancements that have happened in the past, let's say, 6 to 12 months, is that this whole technology aspect has been developed so much further that lots of entrepreneurs, web developers and app developers are now able to use it. So not only machine learning specialists or statistical algorithm experts and so forth. So let me start with where AI was coined, and it was coined by John McCarthy in the mid-1950s, and where he had this idea to basically describe the science and the engineering of making machines intelligent. And what we understand today, basically how it's transformed from this original description, is how to simulate human thoughts. That's what people try these days when we talk about AI usually. How can we imitate human thought processes? How can we imitate, in general, how humans behave, how humans act, how humans interact? And that's also where it becomes interesting. But when we think about it, this whole technology aspect of artificial intelligence, of machine learning, of computer vision, for example, in this example, is nothing that is really new, because already in the 60s, companies or people tried to predict where the next move will happen based on recognizing the images. The only issue or drawback that we had at that time was the lack of the advancement in technology itself. Which means we had a lack in processing power, which in this example was the case that it took more than an hour actually to calculate the next step. So it's not usable at all, right? You can't wait for an hour. You can figure it out yourself in an hour if it's moving left or right? So it's not an advancement that machines can bring to the table. It's no value add. And so the lack in processing power is one issue. The other one was, of course, also in this case a lack in the from a camera perspective, right? So about the resolution, for example, to really detect what's happening on a screen, what is on a screen, etc. And of course, another important aspect is the fact that we had a lack in connectivity, in a lack in how we store data and information. Because these days it's pretty easy, because as we will hear in a couple of minutes, you have various APIs out there that do a couple of that provide services like image recognition. But this all happens because you send data from A to B via the internet. It gets processed and gets sent back, and that needs to happen in a timely manner and with data stored in a specific way. And that wasn't the case in the 1960s. But also what happened in the last couple of 30, 40, 50 years was also the definition about artificial intelligence, and even further about cognitive technologies. And basically what we understand today is that cognitive technologies are those like machine learning, which means patterns recognition. What we do from a cognitive perspective as humans as well, where we try to match patterns if we can do specific things or not, what is the outcome, what is the result. In addition to that, it's also natural language processing, so understanding people, right? I'm not French, so I have a hard time to understand French, although I learned it in school. But it's a challenge to learn that, how to understand it, to interpret it, and get the context out of it. And it's pretty fascinating to me because right now I'm living in the Netherlands, but I'm originate from Austria. And although I don't speak the language, we know this all. We can guess the context a little bit if we look at the people, if we look at the faces, if we look how they express themselves. We don't really need to understand the language in order to get if they're talking about something that's funny, if they're talking about something that's business related, etc. And that's something that machines also need to learn and need to recognize. Therefore, they need to be capable of computer vision, recognizing what is going on in the world, recognizing the environment that we are in, and to put everything here, the actions and the environment, into context. When we look at the technology itself, it's already used for quite a long time. Not only or not only from a science perspective, but also from a business perspective. When you think about Google, it was founded in 1997, one of the core technologies that they used to become successful was, of course, machine learning. Other technologies that are pretty successful and used today are from IBM Watson itself, for example, to analyze diagnosis and diseases, and all these matters that are very hard to distinguish for humans because it's a vast amount of data, and it's difficult to grasp the scope of what the results or what to look for, basically. We also have examples of Amazon that uses machine learning techniques in order to recommend products that they have to offer. But it's also about behavior already. Facebook recognizes and makes patterns out of your behaviors and shows you specific posts. I just heard a couple of days ago, it was yesterday, that they show only posts with specific views according to, let's not say manipulate vote elections, but in order to have a certain reaction from the users, which then has an impact, of course, in the real world. On the other hand, we also have Apple with Siri, for example, that uses a human-like interface, a natural language interface, in order to communicate. So the technology itself is nothing new, but what they all have in common was that it was a huge effort in really to make use of these technologies, to add value for the customers and to add value from a business perspective. And this is something that changed in the past 6 to 12 months at latest. With the introduction of accessible services, as I mentioned at the beginning, for example, through APIs, as for example Watson does, in order to make computer image recognition accessible, to make speech-to-text services accessible. That's something that really changed. And that's something that changes quite a lot, because this means we don't need to have in each company data scientists, machine learning experts that work for 3, 4, 5, 6 months on algorithms, on maintaining them, on improving them. This means that every web developer, every app developer, every product designer, everybody who understands basically how to implement a Facebook API or a Twitter API, anything else out there, can make use of these services. And this brings this whole level of, let's say, artificial intelligence and cognitive technologies to the application layer, where we really can start thinking about what can we do with this technology, where can we add value for our customers, where is the value from a business perspective. And this is something from a skills point of view. What is hot in the next 3, 4, 5 years when people are applying at companies, for example? It's the skill to really apply these technologies in a way that adds value to the business, for example, to a business unit, to a project, and to the customers. So if anybody wants to, think about what to do in the future, if you have the skill from a product design perspective to figure out within a company, within processes, within products and services, where to apply with these techniques from a high value perspective, then this is something that's definitely required and highly in demand. I always compare this accessibility and availability of the services with hosting. In 2006, AWS was founded and was let's say, launched publicly. And before that, it took a couple of days in order to get a web application up and running. You had somebody to maintain it, you had somebody to make sure it works, it runs, it's up and running, and everything works. AWS came and basically everything was, it's not that simple, but you just actually threw it on there and it runs. And that's the same kind of analogy that I have for machine learning, what happens today. Instead of having a huge focus within your company and within your team on how to develop machine learning algorithms and tools, how to do all these kind of data science modeling, activities and tasks, how to do modeling, how to structure unstructured data, you can use tools out there like IBM Watson, for example, to really implement these technologies and don't worry about it. And there, what happens is that we will see, and that's what's already happening, a vast amount of different products that are out there that are enabled by artificial intelligence, but where artificial intelligence is not really at the core of the business, because it's something that enables it, but the real product and service is something different. And I tried for tonight to also find some, of course, French startups that are doing it, and of course Desk is very popular as, let's say, a competitor to Amy or X.AI. Others that we have is, of course, iNeed, which is pretty similar to Magic. What these companies do is that they offer services that require tools like chatbots, or conversational agents, in order to serve the customers in a better way, and in a more valuable way, to make the point of entry, for example, easier, to make the whole engagement easier, and therefore we can really say that the future is already there. We don't need to wait, and everybody can apply it. It takes roughly a couple of days to get an application like this up and running. It takes only a couple of weeks anymore to really train a system to get reasonable results when you build a bot, for example. It doesn't take months anymore, and you don't need to have highly skilled people in order to do that. And I also have to mention highly skilled people. Of course, they're still required, right? So data scientists, or let's say people, to stay with the analogy of hosting, the experts on the IT side, on the hosting side, they have moved up and started with A/B testing, with figuring out what works better on the customer side, what's more efficient, and what's more, and how to optimize processes within a company. On the same side, what happens with AI is the data scientists, don't need to worry anymore about structuring unstructured information. But what they will do is now focus on the prediction engines that they can build on top of it to give better predictions on what the customer might want to buy, what the customer might want to do, or also recommendation engines. When we think about an example that we'll give in a couple of minutes, for example, in the healthcare industry, about assisting a doctor about the diagnosis of specific diseases through specific services out here. So let's look into some examples that we have. And one of the first ones, I made kind of 4 buckets for tonight. One of the first ones is business intelligence. And business intelligence usually means quite a lot, right? In this case, let's think about what you can do actually with the data and the information that's available that helps your business to position your products better. And let's take an e-commerce store, for example. What if you could analyze, for example, your competitors' product descriptions, including with the photos, and therefore figure out if the pricing strategy works, is really comparable to what you offer, and if also the positioning of the products in your store is comparable and is competitive to your competition's offer, for example. What if you could analyze the customer reviews of your competitors in order to figure out what's the target market, which kind of customers your competitors are attracting, to better focus and build out your target audience. So these are kind of examples what you can do with these technologies to deliver better services, to be more competitive, to analyze the data and the information that's already out there in a way that makes sense for you. And that's a very important aspect attached to that is twofold. One is you can do this on scale, and the second one is that you can do this in real time. And that's what these technologies enable you. You don't need to have hundreds of people sitting somewhere and analyzing thousands of product descriptions, for example, to show if this is in alignment with the meaning, in alignment with communications, with your marketing strategy. You can do this with a computer, and you can do this in real time. You can adapt in real time, and that's important because this is scalable. The second bucket I chose is, of course, the very hot topic about bots or concierge or conversational agents, however we want to call that. And what's important here is that this is a tool for any kind of complex decision-making process. And this doesn't mean only for e-commerce stores, for example, but this goes along with any kind of process where your customers need to be funneled through a very long tail and very individualized process of making a buying decision, or making it. Let's stick with the example of the buying decision. This can happen in the travel industry. This can happen in the fashion industry. This can happen in the, for example, in the farming industry. We all try to, for example, not all, of course, that's the wrong wording, but a lot of entrepreneurs are trying to revolutionize industries that tend to be not very open. And this means that skills, this means that knowledge is also not publicly accessible. This makes it very hard for entrepreneurs to really get into this industry and to really disrupt something. With technologies or using, for example, concierge or bots in terms of customer engagement, you can make little information that is available very broadly accessible to your customers. You can really think about how can customer service differentiate you from any kind of other person out there, any kind of other company out there, and deliver amazing customer experience. And here we should not only think about bots or concierges, but we should also think about how user interfaces will look like in the future. I'm not sure if we will have app stores in 10 years from now, because that's a very dumb interface, honestly, right? I mean, searching through millions of apps, having faked reviews more or less, because you know that how this whole works. We are entrepreneurs and startups, right? So we know how this thing works. So that's a very dumb way, right? So when we have natural language interfaces where we just talk to the device, because finally it's not dumb anymore, because finally it can react in the way how we behave, and not we need to learn how the machine behaves. That enables completely new ways of engagement, and that means that you can interconnect with specific services. And we see this from large companies with a huge customer base where they integrate among each other, whether it's cab companies into map companies like Google, for example, or the other way around, because this whole collaboration methodology makes much more sense in order to deliver better or more value to the customers and a better customer experience. But if we have a natural language interface, we don't have designs in that way anymore, right? Because we don't differentiate anymore about the design of an app or about how the user interface looks like. So to me, one question is, or one challenge is, how can we ramp up the whole user experience and user interface designs in the future to accommodate these type of technologies? Next bucket, of course, is everything around what I call now monitoring systems. And monitoring systems means, to stick with, let's say, the commerce example, is buying something by getting or putting the context of your environment already into your buying decision. Let's take a furniture company, for example, where you're looking for couches, right? And these couches are, they have different colors and different designs, and they have different sizes, and you have to choose yourself what fits and what fits best from your perspective, for example, in this room, and which size fits best in the room. What if you can just take a photo of the room and say, I want to replace that couch? And it gives you, from a sizing perspective, it gives you from a design perspective what fits into this room. That's a completely new kind of customer experience that you have. That also gives completely new ways of job opportunities out there about how interior designers, for example, could work with customers, using marketplaces like that in order to deliver, better value or more value to the end client. On the other hand, of course, it's, for example, it costs millions of dollars, usually in a project way, to do these quite interesting examples, what I have put on as a background image, about monitoring what's happening out of in retail stores, in shop windows, in order to to deliver personalized advertisements. With the technologies these days, it's very simple to analyze what's the person, or who is the person outside of the window. If it's a male or female, what's the age group, what's the clothing style that she has. You're looking, for example, on facial recognitions. Is she happy? Is she sad? Better showing her something that's funny to get her into the store instead of something that she's scared of. It's nothing that's, from a mindset perspective, completely new. But it's now available. It's available for actually anybody in this room who knows how to build an application to implement this, to offer these kind of services, and to build amazing new products in order to serve these kind of customers. And the last bucket that I've chosen is everything around service agents. And for service agents, we can also call them expert systems, for example, is everything that helps you, helps me, helps us become smarter. So like having an advisor, having an expert on the side that helps me to deliver more reliable answers in, for example, when I'm when I'm in the healthcare industry, when I'm a doctor, to deliver just better answers, because the device on the side helps me and acts like a person who is very experienced, who can weigh if if the information that, for example, I got about this patient, if that information is actually enough to make a diagnosis. Because these days, we all know that, you go to a doctor, you say, I'm sick. Then he looks at you and say, yeah, you get this, right? Or maybe it's right, that one, is your leg hurting? Okay, maybe this, right? But it's not really a proficient way of diagnosing a patient. With these type of technologies, with the implementation of data that's available, but only with facial recognition about what, seeing what's your emotion and what's your facial expression, how you do today, how you, for example, conduct a conversation, gives very much insights for a machine like Watson to provide this as valuable input for a doctor to make a better diagnosis, for example. And we can take this example into all other kinds of industries that are very service related. We can take this into industries of constructioneers, where you have a service agent that helps you to keep on track with a project plan. And that doesn't sound very exciting or very sexy as a business, but it's a huge issue. It's, from a business aspect, a huge issue at the moment, because they all have gloves. It's noisy out there. They can't really want to type something in. It's really hard to keep track of everything. But having somebody on the side that monitors what you're doing and that gives you, via natural language interface, a new user experience to really keep track of your work and to become better at your work, that's something that's completely new. So, what to expect, right? From my perspective, I would expect something that's some interface designs that are far less intrusive than what we have today. We have other products out there where you can just call the name of this device, and then you can ask it specific questions about the weather, or you can start ordering something. But this kind of this kind of very little intrusiveness of how to interact with a service or with a product will be taken to a whole new level. We will see a lot of companies and a lot of products that will start integrating among each other in order to deliver better customer value. And I would expect that it will be a completely new challenge for companies to brand themselves who really delivers the customer value in the future. And that's another segment that will pop up in the coming years, how to really make sure that I know that this is service A because I'm just using it through through an interface that actually enables me to engage with a lot of services these days. The second part, or what else can we expect, is real-time personalization on scale. So with bots, with these expert systems, with everything that has to do with interactions, this is available in real time. When we usually we go to the bakery somewhere around the corner. He knows us for 10 years. He knows what I want, what I like. We have this with companies that have reached massive scale in the past century. But this will now be also accessible to smaller companies, to smart startups. In the way that it will take every couple of months, it will take less and less amount of information that you need to use to train a system, and to give expertise and to give advice. And that will proceed on a massive scale as well. So we will see lots of, or in the future products, any kind of product out there will always be personalized and not generalized anymore. And that's really interesting, will be about the food industry, right? Everybody talks about ag tech, agriculture technology, and food tech, and those kind of things. We're all eating the same things, right? That's pretty strange. We're not wearing the same things, but we're all eating more or less the same things. Why is this not personalized? This type of AI can really help in doing that. And the last but not least, of course, is being context aware and have learning systems, something that learns with you. So take, for example, a tool that learns with you by helping you to schedule your meetings. But if you can transact this learning because you're allowing this information that this intelligence system has learned over the last couple of months, to use that, for example, for other kind of services that you want to use in future by transferring this information on a secure, on a privacy, on a level of privacy that we can all live with, right? Then this will help us to really get to intelligent systems that are really smart and that are really helpful and not just fake of being helpful. So what can you do with it today, right? So let's show off a little bit of Watson, because that's where I'm from and that's what I'm working from, and they have amazing stuff to do. So what you can do with Watson is basically that you have lots of demos out there that really can help you to spark your minds, what you can do, in which industry you can improve, and all these kind of things. In addition to that, what we have with Watson is, for example, application starter kits, something that's pretty cool for a company like IBM, because it gives you use cases that are very common and applicable. It provides you further which kind of services and how to use them. In addition to that, it provides you live demos to see how it can work. And last but not least, it gives you, besides the documentation, also fallable code on GitHub that you can just take and use in order to commercialize it within your solution. And that's a pretty interesting approach that we have taken in order to enable everyone to build the products of the future. And last but not least, again, is about the developer community. We have a pretty broad developer community that are kind of online 24/7 to answer questions, to help you with issues, how to develop specific applications, how to implement it into your solution architecture, etc., etc. So that was basically it. My last thought I want to put on your way is or to give you on your way is that this is really something that is about design thinking. That is about the process of how to really apply this type of technologies. It's not about if an algorithm is 1% better or worse. It's really about what can anyone do in his specific industry for his specific use case or problem that he wants to solve in order to reach this better, in order to add more value to their customers, or to optimize their own processes to have a business with better margins, for example. So thanks for the attention. Took longer than expected. Let's open it up for questions and hopefully lively discussion. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
We all notice the increased development of artificial intelligence in our daily life. And I was wondering how can the artificial intelligence, or whether the artificial intelligence can lead to decision bias. And by that, by that, when we think about Watson, for example, we have Watson elections that can link people's mood and maybe tendencies to, voters' mood and tendencies to presidential candidate, speech and psychological tendencies as well. How can this, do you see any risk in terms of influencing people's decision, and whether we should put some ethics and regulation around this to make sure that these algorithms and this data are not based on simplistic models that can influence in such a very important decision, which is like voting for a candidate, or maybe having medical advice from from an algorithm. So that's my question.
I think I don't want to give a statement about who and in what areas we are being manipulated these days already, right? So this is something we have our own opinions on that. I would argue that these type of technologies now empower everyone to fight back, right? So we can now build tools very easily to as a counterpart to systems that try to manipulate us, because we can identify the manipulation in the back. Let's take the whole content or media part, for example. Why don't we develop a technology or develop a service out there that helps us to identifying if somebody is trying to influence us on a specific way, in a specific level, by trying to really force a specific emotion that we have, right? I don't think that this whole that AI forces this. I think AI can help to kind of reduce these kind of aspects. But it also has, we also can consider about the aspect who is using these kind of technologies. It's always about there's one piece, we don't have strong AI at this moment. We're not at the point of singularity. So at this point, my opinion is that any kind of intelligent machine always reflects the values of the person who creates it. Of course, it learns itself. Of course, it develops itself further. But there was one person at the beginning who had an intention and who pressed the button to activate it, right? So that's something that's out there, and that's something that's the more intelligence products get, the better we might be able to reduce this kind of influence, at least to detect it and then fight back, if you will. So doesn't answer your question.
My question is mostly related to what's going to happen in the future with automation and the potential of IBM Watson. So we're seeing increasingly more and more jobs being taken over by some form of automation. One example that springs to mind is Kensho. And what they're doing right now, they're pretty much replacing a lot of C-level, not C-level, but higher manager kind of levels at banks. And as this process goes on, what we're also seeing is the rise of decentralized autonomous organizations. Now you mentioned that we can turn around and use IBM Watson to understand how customers behave. What I'd like to know is, if we have these kind of decentralized organizations, can you turn around and actually figure out how a company behaves? What I'm talking about is quantification of how the organizational culture is, the strategy, the technical capability, the customer focus, these kind of things which are essentially investment decisions. So do you see that happening in the future? And does IBM Watson have the potential to be able to quantify that?
I mean, IBM Watson can analyze everything that is text, images, videos, and audio, right? So whatever information or data that you have or that you find or have access to, you can analyze it. For what you can analyze it, that's the question that you need to ask yourself, right? What do you expect as an outcome by using these kind of technologies? A lot of jobs will be replaced, like we happened in the last 100, 150 years with other revolutions in that our society went through. But also new jobs will be created, right? So from an analytics perspective or from the financing perspective, replacing C-levels, yeah, maybe. I would argue that we're not at the stage where it's really replacing them. It's more about assisting them to make better decisions. Our society, I would argue, is not really capable of having machines making decisions, and then who is responsible for these decisions made then, right? So there's always a whole aspect of society, of our economy, that also needs to adapt to these type of new technologies or revolutions. But for sure, I personally can see that in any kind of industry, that we become much more data-driven in order to not only predict, but in order to analyze our behavior in the past, to see what are we doing actually. And being data-driven is nothing new, right? I mean, growth hackers and experts on metrics is something that we have a focus on since at least Y Combinator in 2006 and 7. So this is something that happens already, and these technologies now enable, after this whole big data movement, enables to make this data that we all collected the last 10 years to start making sense or use of it. So yeah, if that answers your questions, hope so.
This is almost the same question, but with a different angle. Almost. You speak about help. It seems to be a cool and powerful and promising tool, but basically the know-how of a company is, or human is scanned, compiled and improved, right? After fabless company, brainless company, who really keeps the keys, really understand and control data, IBM or its client? In resume, the question is it a mid-term suicide for a company to use this type of tool? It's almost trolling, I assume.
Okay, usually I have a couple of gin tonics before going to that questions, right? But let's answer that way. When you would use, let's take the Watson example. That's the one that I know about. If you use Watson, what you will use is an own Watson machine. It's an own Watson instance. So what happens is that you would train, if you have an API, using an API from Watson that has trainable models, you would train it and you will own the IP, because not even IBM has access to that. So it's your IP that you create. It's nothing that flows anywhere else. It's nothing that competitors would have access to, etc. So there's I wouldn't argue, I wouldn't say that there's suicide on this side of the data that you have, that you're killing yourself because you're giving away your data, or you're giving away your results or your models or anything else. So from that side, no, there's no suicide aspect.
Just to be sure, IBM never analyze your data. You have your own client on your own side every time? Or is it software as a service?
It's software as a service, and the APIs are that's where you process your data through, processes the data on your own Watson instance and gives it back to you. We don't train our algorithms or models further when you're using it. We do this with research.
IBM never see my data.
No.
Oh, okay.
We see statistical usage of the algorithms and this kind of stuff. That's what we see, how the CPU works and all these kind of things, right? How you use our services, But we don't see the data that you put in, and we don't see the results that are you getting out of that. We develop our technologies further through research, where we invest over 2 billion every year just into the Watson research. And we do this with strategic partnerships, which we usually have where we have an industry focus, where we have this in the healthcare sector with Medtronic, or with SoftBank, or with Under Armour in the commerce sector, etc. But using the Watson Developer Cloud, where you have the APIs accessible, and we get your own Watson instance, and we only see statistical usage information. We don't see the data that you put in or get out, or the results that you get out of it. So no suicide as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, you mentioned that in order to communicate what's possible to do with Watson, you are releasing lots of examples, lots of demos. Yeah, basically, as a technology provider myself, I was wondering if there isn't a chicken and egg problem at the moment, because in some instances, AI technologies can do much more advanced stuff, much more complex stuff than what people designing products are thinking about. And I think there is a problematic to educate people on what's available. And I was wondering what's your take on that, especially if there's a better way than basically learning their business and presenting use cases to them as demo.
So your question is, can you repeat the first question?
Yeah, basically my question is, is there, do you have a good hints, good ideas on how to educate people, educate product designers on what they're able to do with AI technologies? Because, yeah, in my opinion, building demos for each use case is one way of doing it, but it's really costly and requires you to learn about the business of all your potential clients, in fact.
No, we don't tend to do that. So let's say the technologies and the services that are available from a Watson perspective in the cloud, the APIs, with their own Watson instance without security issues, right? Or suicide issues. They are very common services, right? It's the service to translate speech into text. It's a service to analyze specific, images about its content, etc. However you apply that, that's your issue. What we try to do from a design thinking perspective at the moment, from an educational part, is to show companies and startups, let's say, those use cases that have a huge impact, that can have a huge impact on the one side, but have a low effort to implement it. What we see is that lots of, let's say, services and AI techniques, machine learning techniques, cognitive services become commoditized roughly after, within 2 years, because startups are coming up to also offer these services mostly cheaper, mostly for free, right, etc. The same happens with services, right? I mean, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, if you would have searched something in a search engine, you would never have accepted that you get the perfect result already on the first site, website or first page. Now it's a common thing, right? You expect that to happen. That's the same what we have when we say chatbots. Is this something that's new and exciting today? But in 3, 4, 5 years, I would expect that this is something that's ubiquitous, that's everywhere, because that's how I want to engage in various ways to use a service, to buy a product, or for whatever reason. So right now it's the time to really spark the people's minds to really say, okay, use common use cases, implement them in order to get a feeling. And as soon as you see the potential of this technology that it can has on your business, your team or yourself will have much better ideas on what you can do with this technology than I could ever have, because I don't have the problems, I don't face them, so I don't think about the solution basically.
Yeah. So yeah, basically your answer is that people have to try the technology first to have ideas after.
They tried with a specific idea, right? I don't have another example for that, but you try it, of course, right? You see what you get for it, you implement that, you see what you can do, and then you figure it out what you can do. Maybe you hear it, right? Maybe it's not your own idea, maybe you hear it from somebody else. Again, you see it, you.
Okay.
Hi, Christoph. Well, basically, congratulations for Joe Party and for the food truck. Congratulations to Google for the Go. So let's see what the next game you will be playing. I really thought that Watson and IBM was focusing on large companies, Fortune 500 companies, using AI for priority markets like healthcare, helping doctors to do a better job, and legal industry as well. So how can you convince us? Well, I'm very happy that you're here talking to startups and addressing startups. But can you tell us what's your priority between the working for Fortune 500 companies and working with startups? It's a pretty different ball game.
Are we still recording or not? Okay. So IBM has roughly 400,000 employees, right? I think from a resource perspective, we can split up our teams and forces outside to focus on specific types of industries. So Fortune 500 and startups, for example. The reason for focusing on startups is, a normal business development reason. It's just these are the companies of the future. IBM is very fortunate because with good leadership and technology and research and everything to be after 103 years still, on top of the list. But our partners and our clients, you know, are coming out of this whole startup and entrepreneurial wave the past 10, 15 years, which we saw. And also the types of or the way how to engage in the future, SaaS products, SaaS models. Startups know exactly how to use them.
Sure.
And from a personal point of view, I expect amazing new types of products and technology or services coming out of startups, and not or not ultimately from large corporations with, you know, many different, you know, use cases, many different priorities. So I fancy to work with startups and entrepreneurs, not only because I did it the past 5, 6, 7 years, but because of those are the ones that, you know, that will come up with these new great ideas, that will come up with these exciting ones. So to really change the world.
Do we get a different answer if we stop the recording?
No, that was already
Okay,
the answer.
all right.
No
So let's take an example, because JulieDesk, you mentioned JulieDesk.
Yeah.
It's a great company. I love JulieDesk. But at the beginning, it's a startup. It means it's a 4-people company, 2 people, 4 people, 6 people company.
Yeah.
So, sorry to be a bit aggressive, Christoph, but how many
Just give it to me.
people do you have on the other side at IBM to be able to address the requests of hundreds of 4-people's companies?
I would say that they have a perfect use case to use our services and technologies, right, to benefit out of it. They are a service, a customer-facing company. So I would not be you know, if they have a great machine learning team, they could develop everything themselves. I'm not sure if this would be the best use of their resources. I would focus more on delivering and, you know, great customer experience by training it, and not by developing the algorithms and technologies in order to then train it. So JulieDesk would be a potentially good partner for us to say they make use of our technology and therefore build an even better product.
And last question, if I may, what's the pricing model you're using? Is it with startups?
So for startups, we have our global entrepreneurship program. So where you get 12,000 euros for 1 year of credits for free. So you can use Watson, and you have APIs, for example, natural language classification. Every API call costs, I think, 0.02 or 0.03. So with 12,000 euros worth in credits, I think you can get quite far to really develop something. Besides that, any kind of API is usable for free until a certain limit every month. So usually it's 1,000 API calls per month for free. So you can build and test your applications basically for free. So I think that's very, very developer and very startup friendly but not only startups, right? I mean, large corporations are hiring people from the startup economy in order to build products out of, you know, with more resources, project teams, etc. So it's for anyone out there to really get hands-on and start developing. And I have seen companies building a chatbot within 3.5 hours with our technology.
Thank you, well. Thank you.
Oh, you're Dutch. No?
Just a quick question. Can you give an example of the most popular API used by IBM Watson API used by startups?
Most popular used one by startups, let's say from a development perspective, is personality insights. So because this can be used for recruiting, this can be used for dating. This can be used for financial services, can be used in education. So it's a pretty broad case how to adapt services and make it more personalized. Others are for sure the whole bot APIs, which is natural language classification, and the dialogue APIs. So I would say these are the most popular ones at the moment by startups in order to implement them. I'm around, so don't worry. I'm not running away. Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Give a big clap for yourself. Thank you.